Hi, everyone. Welcome to the LSP Method Podcast, where we talk all things Lego Serious Play and other things. And today, well, I'm Michael Fern, but today we've got an awesome guest. I have been looking forward to this one. We have Will Barnes. Will, welcome.
Thanks, Michael. I'm really happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. I'm listening to a few of the podcasts and think it's awesome what you're doing. So, really looking forward to it today.
Thanks, and looking forward to hearing your insights about LSP. As I do, as you know, you've seen some of these podcasts, as I do with most of the guests, I throw it back over to you to do your own introduction. Although I will say that we met, how many years ago now? Was it pre-pandemic or was it post-pandemic? I can't even remember now. So
Not
it's
sure
like
the world existed pre-pandemic.
You're right. I don't think it did. But we met and over Lego Serious Play, and since then I've been fascinated to see how you've been using it and the context. So tell us who you are, where you use Lego Serious Play, what work do you do, and of course I got you to do a build, so feel free to bring that in anytime. But yeah, I'll throw it over to you.
Thanks, Michael. Well, listen, let me bring in one I made earlier.
Oh yeah, we talked off air before, Will and I, and I'm super excited about this build. No pressure, but let's. I'm going to put you on the big screen.
So, I will apologize. I took a bit of a sneaky change on how you usually do this. I outsourced it to my little kids. So I got a lot of help on, bringing this together. So, I'm not sure if you can see that, but what we have is on the right-hand side of the model represents our background. So we've chosen the kind of white colors there because apparently from my girl's perspective, the life we had before we moved to Australia was somewhere cold. So living in Ireland, having that kind of weather dynamic, but also having moved somewhere different to be able to have that grounding of who we are and the background we bring. And I really think really that kind of helps us kind of settle into our life in Australia and part of the work, we come from a heritage of storytellers. So using something like Lego Serious Play really helps bring that to life. While we're in Australia, in the middle part here, you'll see like a lot of the ferns. I'm over the other side here trying to do a bit of a barbecue, which is me trying to do something new. But it really comes on the middle bit there where we see the pink and the blue. So for me, what's really important is that foundation. So the foundation of family, culture, life, and that kind of community. And the blue for me is that kind of aspiration into the future. So how we all helped ourselves stretch and change into the future then as well. And then the last part is, the girls were really interested in what's the landing board or the jumping board for the future. So now that we start to adventure life and adventure like this new life we all have past COVID, how do we springboard into the future and how do we look at that ocean that we don't know exists or looking at future possibilities? So a lot of the work that I do is helping companies realize that. So helping working with teams, just become better versions of themselves and have an idea of what good looks like. And I really have been fortunate to do that. So working outside of Australia and working inside of Australia, I've worked with prisons, with nuns, with betting and gambling companies, all the way down to some of the biggest brands in the world. So
Mhm.
it's really been an enjoyable experience. And I love using Lego Serious Play as one of the tools that really helps have better conversations and
Mhm.
collaboration and connection then as well.
Oh, I love it. And I love that you and your kids went rogue and just built it together. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And you know why I do that activity, both with podcast guests, but also with, as you know, in sessions, that's my sort of go-to warm-up, is because it just gets at a different type of introduction. Like if I just said, tell us about your will, and you just done it normally, you probably would have started off a bit more with your job and that defined you as your identity. But to just launch like to hear and the audience to hear straight away, okay, family and what was central to it, and you come from a sort of history of storytellers and how that grounds you, and the different parts of your life as you moved to Australia. It's like, I don't know, just as you know, when you do these introductions in sessions, it just gets at a different angle on the identity on the person, and it really sort of sets up a different conversation. So thank you for going rogue.
Thank you kindly.
I thank your kids too. After the podcast, you can tell that it's awesome. And I love also that you've got, in terms of just the Lego that you use, some of those Friends Legos and other things. And I like seeing, I'd use the standard Lego series play kits, but I love seeing all the different pieces from Friends Lego to, bits that aren't like flames and, the water and all sorts of stuff. There's so many great pieces of Lego and so many great
Yeah.
metaphors. So thank you for
So
sharing some of those.
one of the interesting ones I had, I normally use it from two different parts is one normally when doing it with clients. So one of the cases that we done it about a year ago was with a big engineering company
Mm,
and we're doing a workshop and we just started bringing in lots of different bricks
mm,
and the conversation and the connection that that made with people having different colors, different
mm,
types of Lego to use. It was really a better conversation.
mm.
And it really kind of opened up different thinking than what we thought was there by just doing our normal PowerPoint or initial conversation. So it was
Nice.
really, really interesting. And then the next part, and this is where I use it a lot more now, is when we're developing a project or starting a project. It could
Mm,
be a global project. So one of the projects I started recently in my professional services role is working on a big medical devices company, a global medical devices company. So there's
mm,
about 20 or 30 people globally on this.
mm,
And what I thought was, how do we better understand ourselves? How do we better connect as people?
mm.
How do we better know where we come from, why we're here, what success would look like out of this project for everybody?
Yeah.
I decided to bring in Lego Serious Play as part of that. And it was really interesting because I think for a lot of people, it's a fun thing to do. It's different.
Yeah.
And I think for my team working on it, they'd never done it before. So I
Mm,
think having that test of what it means
yeah.
and just the conversations and how it changed the culture of the program was really, really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love those two examples. And you mentioned you work in professional services. So it's interesting. I know a little bit about professional services, having many, many years ago worked for a couple of years at KPMG. But you talked about that, hey, the clients come in and you want them to have different conversations. And it's like, I know you have so many different clients, as in like, you're always out there helping different clients, different organizations, doing different things. That's what professional services is. So I just, with Lego Series Play, you talking about hey, having that different conversation, I can just see the repeated use of, a client comes to you, they're sort of stuck or they've traditionally done things a certain way, and you just bring this out to, like you keep saying, just have that different conversation. So I love that use case. But then you were talking about another one there, which is okay, once you're deep in that project, it's almost like it's the how do we work better as a team or as a project? And I know the teams fluctuate as well. Like you'll come together for, say, you talked about medical devices, you come together for that. And then it might be a 6 month engagement, 12-month engagement. You do the work, you get it done, and then you break apart, and then you form a different team. So it's almost like there's all these ebbs and flows. So I love it. It's like, you're working with clients, LSP is helping you there. You're working with different teams, and you're providing a more solid foundation for them to do their technical work. So yeah, what great some examples there. Thanks, Will.
Yeah, it's really enjoyable. I have to say, like, ever since we met, I've done a lot of facilitation in the past, and I
Mm,
love that kind of experience, getting out of your head, get into your hands, get into a different place.
mm,
And I think one of the things that really hit me from some of the conversations you have had is, it's one of those things, start slow, but it gets you better conversations quicker.
yeah,
And I think
yeah.
from doing it, you can really see that happening. It's really exciting to be able to see people get that aha moment
Mm,
and having different people. So, my work would have, the middle management, the C-suite, and just having people in the same room having that discussion. It
mm,
kind of brings everybody down to the same level.
yeah.
It kind of brings down some of the guardrails that I've seen. And
Mm,
it just helps people get into a different kind of flow state almost that I've
yeah.
seen people connect into.
Yeah, yeah. I like you mentioned around flow state, and we've talked about flow in terms of getting into flow, but I almost think it's broader than just flow. It is like like we're messing with people's states of consciousness. It's like we're changing them, and flow is one of them. And I've even seen like some mindfulness happening in these moments as well. And yeah, so it's almost like when we're messing with that to to change. Well, I always say change the process, change the outcome. And what you're describing is just that. It's different groups, giving them a common language. It's bringing it down. I love it. So we talked about professional services, and you talked about some examples. How have you found it? A lot of the podcast guests I've had have been more sort of external facilitators, or they had their own business, or and they're very sort of deep in the Lego Series Play. I know Lego Series Play is just one tool amongst the many facilitation tools you have. how have you found it? I guess both within the professional services firm that you work in, but also with clients. Like, how have you seen that reaction? Like, do you just come in and like slam Lego Serious Play on the table? Do you have to convince people? Like, yeah, tell us about how I guess the reception of it is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Michael. I suppose the professional services company, I mean, at the moment, they have a few different people to do Lego Serious Play, so it's not
Mm,
as out there as what people think.
yeah.
Normally, when we go to clients or to different companies, whether it's in Australia or outside of Australia, it kind of brings that interest in. So they probably 99% they haven't heard of it before.
Yeah.
And we're doing it as part of a workshop for a system change or a team change or a process change or something else. So they're a little bit nervous to start with
Yeah,
because they feel like we're going to do something to them.
yeah.
And this just kind of helps take a step back and say, okay, we're doing it together. This is a useful
Yeah.
tool to kind of connect us together, to understand ourselves as people, to bring that team together. So,
Mm,
like one of the companies, they were doing a system change, so they had that kind of nervousness. And then when I talked about doing Lego Serious Play, they were really interested. They were kind of curious. They were like,
mm.
"What is this magic you talk of?" So they expect me to go to the Lego shop and just buy a simple model.
Mm,
But then when I bring a bag of just stuff,
mm,
like different parts of Lego, you can see them think and kind of look at it and be more curious.
mm,
And it really changes the focus of a workshop for me because a lot of people just take a step back, maybe wouldn't get that involved, don't feel safe to talk,
mm,
and don't kind of, really have that conversation they really, really want to have.
mm,
So I think for me, the tool of Lego really helps people and, get out of their head, stop having the meeting in their head and get into their
mm.
hands and being able to kind of use the tools to have that conversation and to have that discussion.
Yeah.
And I suppose for clients, it's still not as out there as it should be, in my view.
Mm,
It's still that kind of strange, fun thing that's coming in.
yeah, yeah.
And what I've been trying to do, particularly where I am in Victoria, is have that broadened out discussion to say, well, okay, well, if we're ever doing this type of change within a company,
Mm,
let's use Lego Serious Play as one of the priority tools to have a discussion to start.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. I like that. One thing, and yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like you're advocating for change within your own organization. It's like, here's this
Yeah.
tool, you've been using it well. And it's like, hey, if we get this again and again and again, because that's what professional services do, it's like lots of different clients. This is one of the tools we should really be using. I love it. Um, you were talking before about you mentioned that the clients are having the conversations that they wanted to or that they should be having. And I find it was interesting that that sort of stuck in my mind as you were talking because I often think that's the thing that Lego Series Play is really good at. It's like it's almost like these people that you're working with, they know they're good. It's just that they're stuck, whether it's a communication thing, a team thing, a way forward, an authority thing. Like there's just something like they sort of know what they need to be all doing. Um, but it's like maybe another metaphor is like it's not, there's no lubrication,
Yep.
there's no easy way for all these things to happen. And I guess it's, talking about the facilitation profession, that's what we do. It's like we're not in there to be the expert and say, here's the answer. We're here to sort of guide them to the answer that they probably already know, but they just are struggling with to do it. So yeah, that really
I'd say a
struck
lot of
me.
my role on that, Michael, is more of the coach slash counselor at times.
Yeah,
Help people get to the discussion they want. And, I know you've definitely seen it before. People having that conversation and being able to use the words they haven't found before by using it. It's
yeah,
been really powerful. And just having people having that kind of that aha moment or that emotional reaction to it.
yeah,
I think a lot of people get surprised that something like Lego can do that for them.
yeah. Why? We were talking before about, some of the stuff in the background in your thing about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Fraggle Rock and other things as well. And it made me think just then, like, sort of why are they surprised or why does it have that emotional connection? And I think part of it is, say, the nostalgia. Part of it is the connection with Lego from, it's people our age, it's people a bit younger as well, and people a bit older. It's that sort of nostalgic connection. I think that's definitely part of it. But you're right. I see that surprise every time. It's like, what do you think that is? Like, what do you think it is about Lego Series Play that does that surprise, that does that, um, that thing that
Yeah.
surprises them.
And I think it's a bit of a different approach because in professional services, we can kill people with PowerPoint.
Yeah,
So I think,
I remember
we
that from my times. Like I'm trying to think of the density of text that I could fit on a slide.
so, a lot of people kind of just they think of professional services coming in to do something to us. They're
Mm.
doing this workshop. They're just going to be a broadcaster at us.
Experts, they're going to tell us the
They're
answer.
going to tell us the answer. Where
Yeah,
I'm thinking, you know your business better than anybody else does.
yeah.
You know the way of working. You know the culture. You know what's important for you. So let's just take a step back and pause a little bit. And
Mm,
that's not easy. I think, you're trying something new. It's something that's going to be at the start. It probably take a bit longer.
mm.
And people get a bit nervous around that because they're saying, oh, well, we have to just get started doing things.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we're like, well, actually, if we don't get the basics right, the doing of the things will be much harder than it needs to be.
Mm,
So if
yeah.
we don't understand, the roles, the culture, the ways of working, who we are, what's important at the start, a year's time when we're putting that system into practice, people won't be engaged or they won't use it as much as they could be, or they don't
Yeah,
understand why we're doing it.
yeah.
So a lot of the time, I try and take a step back and have people just pause a little bit and
Mm,
use this as the start. And I think for me, where it comes back really, really important is, and I even see it in my own life, just getting out of you spend a lot of time in your head and
yeah.
just getting out of your head and into your hands. And just that movement creates that different connection and that
Mm,
kind of emotion behind it then as well. That's where my theory is just literally having something that people can do with their hands.
yeah.
And Lego is one of the tools I have. A few other tools that's kind of has the same thing where getting out of your head and into your hands,
Mm,
and all of them have a similar reaction.
yeah. I love that. So many things there. It's like slow down, take your time to start with, use your hands. It's funny. It's all the opposite of, how we normally do this. We're normally busy, busy, busy. And like
Yep.
you said, you get to implementation and it just doesn't work. Or we're so in the digital world, we're so in our heads, we're so, it's Lego Series Player, from what you were saying as well, and what I've experienced, it brings back a lot of counterpoints to modern culture, modern business culture, which is sort of surprising. It's like it's why do we sort of bowl ahead with this busy digital head work when, yeah, it's been somewhat effective for creating the world around us, but like, why wouldn't we tap into hands? Why wouldn't we tap into that sort of slower pace? It's almost like having different gears.
Yep.
It's like we're stuck in like fast. It's like, why not have some of the different gears to change it up? And you're seeing the benefits of that.
Yeah, no, I think for me, it comes in nicely with having just a better set of questions and a better conversation then as
Mm,
well. So, a lot of the time that I'm doing work in these companies, and, whether it's a local company or a global company,
mm,
it's just having better questions around this.
yeah.
What does this change mean to you? What does it mean for the people that aren't in the room? How do
Yeah.
they react? How do they engage with this?
Mm,
And then just asking things like, it's a fairly basic thing, but do you want to be hugged, helped, or heard?
yeah.
And sometimes, people just want a hug.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
Like, this change is too hard. A lot of noise coming at me. I just need a hug. It's
Yeah.
all too hard. Some people want help. So,
Yeah.
you know, this is happening. I don't understand it. Can you just take more time with me?
Yeah.
And some people maybe haven't had the voice that they wanted to have,
Yeah.
but they just need to be heard. And I
Yeah.
think for us, working in professional services or working in Lego Serious Play, a lot of the time in the facilitation, we just need to take a step back and say, okay, what kind of conversation are we having?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I love you talking about questions a lot, just briefly there. As when we sort of learnt the Lego Series Play method, like the actual mechanics of it as a facilitator, if you're a decent enough facilitator, it works a treat. Like,
Yeah,
it's so reliable. You come in, it does its thing. And now I'm just learning time and time again. It's just all in the question. And I heard this wonderful thing many years back. It's like once you hear a question, you can't unhear it. And it's like it gets in your mind. Like, so that's why questions are so powerful, because it's like you heard that question. And if you've got half a brain, it bubbles in there. And it's like you can't unhear it once you've heard it. And so And I like some of the questions you were saying there about like what does it mean for like within the team? What does it mean outside the team? Um, yeah, that's great. And I just, yeah, in the end, Lego Series Play is just a like you talk about different way to have a conversation, and it's all driven by those questions that you come up with, and you come in with.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and it's something that's really interesting now. I think, having people connect in work and outside of work, just having that better relationship with questions to be able to
mm,
open up things as well. I think that makes sense.
mm,
A lot of the work I do with companies, teams don't ne necessarily connect like that.
yeah,
So they don't want to have those kind of questions. They'll have easy ones that's kind of a yes or no, kind of a binary type of question and
yeah,
answer. But really taking a step back and as a team agreeing, okay, why are we doing this? What's important? What does it
yeah.
mean to us? I think using Lego Serious Play really helps take that step forward then as well.
Yeah, it's really questions. It's that time you talked about to answer, to be in that sort of uncertain space of what's the answer going to be, rather than sort of spit out what the number is, or the really definitive answer. Love it. Will, I got you to do another build, something
You
that we
did.
aren't talking enough about. So
You
tell
did.
us, what is it? And how did you define, is this professional services or is this
Yeah, so it kind of relates to some of the conversation we had, and it kind of links into two different elements here. So one is, I'm not sure how well you can see that. One is the ability to think. So for a lot of the companies I work with and a lot of the companies I work for, yeah, we've a lot more coming at us. So different signals coming at us, COVID stuff happening in the background, changes in the environment, you know, people or things we think trying to kill us. So whether it be a dinosaur or something else, and just kind of a lot of different information and noise happening at the same time. So I think for me, we've lost that ability to just step back and think, and being able to have that thinking time in terms of, particularly in professional services, we're very much brought in for our opinion and perspective. So I think it's important that we take a step back and just understand, okay, who is this company? Why do they exist? What are they looking for? Why have they come to us? How can we help them? What's the impact and outcome we're trying to achieve? And I think just as teams and people, just having that step back, because the ability to think, I think, has been a little bit lost because we've more information coming at us than ever before. As you touched on earlier, we kind of get into that noise. So how do we take that step back and just protect the thing that kind of moves us forward? And I think the second part is being able to kind of look at, well, what does that noise do? And how do we look into the future? And one of the big things for me is just looking at those kind of brilliant basics. So just you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to turn the little parts nicely and slowly and continually do the basics and drive forward. So for me, I'm a big advocate of, reducing the noise, spending a bit more to kind of thinking time and being able to focus on the brilliant basics. So for me, that's, things around if we're having a meeting, what do we want to get out of the meeting? What's the agenda? Who's doing
mm,
the minutes? And that might seem obvious, but for a lot of the people and teams I work with now, a lot of those obvious things aren't put into practice.
mm,
And the the benefit I see of putting those things into practice is if you can continually put the basics into practice, whether you're a company trying to change yourself, a person or a team, or working in professional services like me, if you continue to do those brilliant basics, you will become world class.
mm.
However, if you don't do those brilliant basics, it's not necessarily the things that people ask for, but it's the thing that people notice when it's missing.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Brilliant basics. That is, apart from the fact I love alliteration, that is a great saying. Brilliant basics. And first off, love that model. I love the spinning thing. I just, anyone who gets things to spin in Lego Serious Play and move, I'm just like in awe of. So that was great. But yeah, brilliant basics. It reminds me, of the sort of sports analogy. It's like, think of a sports team and it's just you've got to train, you've got to work on those basics time and time again. And unless you get those right, like the fancy stuff, all the tactics, all the this and the that just doesn't work. It's
Yeah,
like I guess it's knowing it's having a solid foundation, isn't it? It's like putting that work in to be able to do the high level work. But if you just go straight to the high level work, there's cracks, there's crumbles, there's it's veneers, it's facades. People see through it. There's no substance.
Yep. Yeah. And I think for me, Michael, it's just spending that time getting the basics right. So,
Mm,
whether we're doing a change program and using Lego Serious Play to have the conversation at the start,
mm,
it's been able to say is, okay, guys, like what are the roles that we each have? Can we all be clear around what that role is and what it means?
mm,
What's important in terms of how we work together? How do we want to do status reports? In what format? What way do we like information?
mm,
When do we want to meet in person? When do we want to, do it offline?
mm,
Um, when do we want to celebrate the wins and the hardship? Because
mm.
that's important, right? Because things get harder before they get better.
Yeah,
And then how do we know what success looks like? Well, what is success and how do we know when we get there?
yeah, yeah.
And then just using those mechanics and those hygiene factors as part of that to say, okay, we've done the fun stuff with Lego. We can have better conversations, but we need to make sure that we have these brilliant basics in practice in terms of, do we have a plan of attack for what we're doing this week?
Mm,
Does everybody know what their place is on that? What are some of the KPIs or targets that we have around that? And
mm.
then how do we move that into practice? And I think once we have those basics in place, to the point you mentioned, once we have that base and that discipline, it provides the freedom and flexibility to do the fun stuff that everybody wants to do.
Yeah. And do it well and do the high performing stuff.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's interesting. So just something that sparked off when as you were talking about all that is so there's this sort of been debate in my mind, and I've had this conversation with some people, maybe not on the podcast previously, but it's like how much Lego Serious Play it has popped into my mind a lot. And it's funny, you were just as you were talking then, you were talking about getting those basics right, and whether it was just say with your team, but I know your team changes on different engagements, whether it's with clients, getting that right. So it feels like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like if you could, you would use Lego Serious Play a lot more in those spots across like all those engagements to get a lot of those basics right. So and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Will, for you to be, Lego Series Play might be more part of that sort of standard way of working. Like you said before about new engagement, we're doing this sort of thing. Lego Series Play should be one of our go-to tools that we should always use because it works so well in these spots. So in the debate in my mind and other people is um, Lego Serious Play do it a lot because it should just be another tool. It should just be weaved into the way we work.
Yep.
And there's another sort of camp which says, well, we should keep it for more sort of novel, every month, every 2 months to sort of surprise people, to spark different thoughts and things like that. I wonder if you had a thought with that. Like, how much Lego series plays too much, do you think, for what you would do with your work?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. If you use it more, does the benefit reduce
Yeah, yeah,
as
that's the
the
thing,
more
isn't
you
it?
use it? Like I think for me, I haven't lost that benefit from using it so far. So I
Mm,
think the future for me is kind of more using it broader in the market, having more transparency, having more people open to using it, to
yeah.
have that kind of better conversation and be one of the key tools as part of that. So even for me, doing coaching sessions with team members or outside team members, just bringing a few bricks together and just helping them have a conversation is
Yeah.
really helpful. What I normally try and do, Michael, and I've taken this from, looking at sports or looking at military or looking at other companies,
Mm,
when I'm working on a project or a client, trying to create that theme for the project or client. So
yeah,
whether
yeah.
that's, we look at Lego as a company and we say, look at what they've created, look at the journey they've gone on.
Mm,
Here's one of the tools we can use and have that kind of connection to what that looks like.
mm. Yeah, yeah,
Or is
yeah.
it just a tool that we're going to use as part of an overall theme that's going to bring in better discussions, better engagement, better ideas, better collaboration?
Yeah.
So I think for me, particularly as from, the professional services part, we're hearing things around AI and automation and
Mm,
more systems being put in place. And I think that's great. It really helps us, really structure the basic activities.
mm,
But when we have that freedom and space, how do we make sure that we have that better collaboration? We bring those better ideas.
mm.
And I think for me, Lego Serious Play plays a key role in doing that because it's so user friendly, it's so easy,
Yeah.
and the benefit that comes out of it is much deeper than other tools that I've seen so far.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I like that. Obviously you're seeing some of the cutting edge sort of thinking around AI and how companies are using it. And we talked a little bit beforehand about, even before the podcast when we were just chatting about the analog nature of Lego series play and how that's a contrast to stuff like AI and systems and I guess just go back to that point. I guess I'm leaning now more towards Lego series play being this sort of standard operating thing. We just bring it out like a post-it note and I just don't think it's ever going to lose its luster. And, people aren't going to go, oh God, the Lego again. It's because it almost like it'll disappear. And I think even more so as things get more digital and more AI and more sort of heady, getting stuff in our hands more, getting stuff, like you talked about, the bits in between the team members. I don't know. I'm starting to lean more towards it should just be everywhere and all the time as a sort of post-it note in
Yeah, and I think
contrast to the
what
world.
I'd love to see is like in a professional services company like me, that there's a room, like a little playroom for people. Because I think,
Mm,
play is kind of lost a lot of time. And that's
yeah.
how we kind of connect and get better ideas. So there's like a little playroom for adults, and there's a big area of Lego just there for people just to kind of connect together, have
Yeah, yeah.
conversations, and bring
Whenever they
that to
need it.
clients then as well.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, just as we sort of head towards the sort of latter part of the podcast, you've been doing Lego Series Play for a little while now. Any tips or any thoughts or any insights for facilitators out there that might be just getting into it or thinking about getting into it, or if you can reflect back on your LSP journey and how has it been? Like, how was it going into that first session and how has it been since?
Yeah, so it's been an interesting journey. I think, from the time we connected on it and putting it into practice ever since as one of the tools. I think in terms of how much you want to use it and how far you want to go. So
Mm,
whether you want to do like an individual plate and an individual discussion, you want to do a group, or you want to do kind of an environment.
mm.
I think where I found it really appealed to the work that we do is doing a lot more of the individual stuff
Yeah, okay.
and spend a bit more time on the group. So
Yeah.
individual stuff a lot at the start of a project, having an initial conversation around the group. And
Mm,
then as the project commences or is being delivered, we go back to those areas and do much more on the group then as well.
yeah.
So I think for me, understanding how you're going to use it and how much time you have to use it
Yeah.
is really, really important, because you've seen it before and a lot of the people on the podcast have seen it. It takes time to build up. It takes time for people to get used to it and have those conversations and
Yeah.
feel safe to have that kind of discussion then as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I like the way you frame that in terms of, individual group and sort of system ecosystem type stuff. And it sort of mirrors how we teach Lego Serious Play. And probably the more I'm doing with my training is I'm spending more time on that. How do you do it with individuals? How do you do it with groups? And probably less on the how you do with systems and ecosystems because it just takes longer. There's less opportunities to do it. There's less sort of use cases. There's less time. If you need a half a day, it just necessarily versus half an hour, you're just going to do the half an hour one way more. So it sounds like you use it a lot in coaching, a lot in sort of one-on-one work, and then a bit of group work. And yeah, I'd
Yeah.
echo that in terms of people wanting to get out there is think about the contexts that you want to use it in.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, like, for professional services guys listening to this or wanting to use Lego Serious Play, it kind of links into that basic thing of how do you do facilitation, how do you do workshops. So,
Mm,
what do you want to do before, what do you want to do during, what do you want to
mm,
do after, and what do you want people to know, think, and feel. It
mm,
kind of goes back to those areas, and this is just one of the good tools to be able to hit that mark. But you still have
mm.
to do a lot of the work, right? It just doesn't come up on the day and all this magic happens.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot around it. I often say that Lego Series Play is like, and sorry for all the vegetarians out there, it's like the meat in the sandwich. It's like the juicy bit in the middle, that, enhances the conversation, but you still got to do something with that. Like the worst thing you can do is just raise all this stuff and it's like, yep, that's it. I'm out. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm almost jealous of, say, people like yourself that work in professional services that have these longer term engagements where, you use Lego Series Play as one of these tools. You raise this conversation up at a certain point, um, and it gets those insights and then they flow on to that next bit of work, next non-Lego Series Play bit of work. And you can see that go throughout the engagement and the threads of what you did in a Lego Series Play session. I get less of that because I'm perhaps a little more transactional with some of my sessions where I go in, I'm part of a longer day, I'm just a small part of it, and I don't often, get to see some of those threads happening like 6, 12 months later. So I'm
Yeah.
slightly jealous
And
of that.
I
Yeah.
think it's a really good tool to be using professional services where you can start off something doing that kind of visioning strategy part.
Yeah.
Then you go into kind of the problem statement, solutioning type of part. And then you can
Mm,
use it for kind of the ways of working, ideas around how we deliver things. So
yeah.
it kind of has that journey and connection throughout the course of projects that we work on.
Mm,
And I think for me, the key takeaway from working on and using it across a lot of different companies, a lot of different cultures, a lot of different teams, it does connect easily across each of those. So sometimes
mm,
people will overthink, oh, if it's this type of company or this type of people, it won't work
mm.
there.
Yeah,
Whereas I think
yeah.
I've tested that theory quite a lot, and I've seen it work equally well no matter what the situation or scenario is. So I
Yeah.
think tips and tricks, it's not necessarily just for one type of team or one type of company, that
Yeah.
kind of cultural startup. It can be used for the mature company. It can
Yeah.
be used for the middle company in terms of figuring out where they want to go. And it can be used whether it's a C-suite or an analyst level. You can use it
Yeah.
equally well to have that connection. That's been my experience in terms of using it. So I think for
Yeah.
people doing it in practice, don't overthink it. Just put it into practice. Do the
Mm.
basics of how you set up a workshop and facilitation, and the tool will do the work for you.
Yeah, I love that. Because I mean, in the end, it's just people. It's people getting together in groups, whether it's senior people, junior people. And because you're in professional services, you're seeing the whole gamut of different clients, different types of industries. I love it. I'm going to throw you a curveball right at the end, Will. Any sort of not bad sessions, but anything that's stuck in your mind from a Lego Series play session, maybe good or bad. Like, can you think of like a moment or a session that has particularly stuck in your mind from your time
Yeah,
doing Lego
so
Series?
it's quite interesting. One of the kind of middle journeys of using Lego Serious Play from when we started it, I was working on a system change for a client that works in the resources industry, and starting the project, everything was kind of going okay. They were interested in Lego Serious Play as a tool for for one of the workshops.
Hmm.
The start of the workshop just got this feel that maybe things weren't going the right direction. Um,
Mm.
so a lot of different behaviors, a lot of different looks, a lot of different kind of side conversations, and I kind of thought, this is strange. So
Yeah.
put the Lego down on the table, and then people just started berating each other through Lego.
Wow.
So almost
Wow.
saying, oh Michael, this is you. Look at how horrible, really getting into it. And
Wow.
it got completely the wrong behaviors that I was expecting, like completely the
Yeah.
different direction. And I really didn't think that Lego would bring that to life or, it go that direction.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting to see how people would use it the wrong way and to be
Yeah.
able to have the wrong conversation. And for
Oh,
us, it just meant like it was really good for us as professional services advisors to give us a view of, are these the type of clients we want to work with?
yeah. Ooh, I love that. That is such that's such a good example. I think it goes to one of the points I often say is Lego Series Play opens people up. Like it doesn't matter who they are. It's just it sort of lays everything bare. And I personally think that's never a bad thing.
Hmm.
And like you said there, it's because you got to see the client or the people, the culture of those that group for what it was. So for you, it was a great insight that you might not have got to with another tool, and it might have been weeks into the engagement, and other things might have been falling off, or there might have been other problems in the project because of that.
Yep.
But I always say it opens people up, and that's one of the joys of it, but also one of the things to keep an eye open for. Um, is what will it bring up? And I can think of an example where it was a government department and we used Lego Series Play and it all went well, but they couldn't really do anything with it. Like the culture was fine, everything was fine, the session was fine, but it sort of felt like, and they opened up, but they just said, Michael, we can't do any of this stuff. It's like the broader culture of this particular organization doesn't allow us to enact some of this stuff. And so whatever point it is, the start of a session, middle of a session, end of a session, it just there's an openness to Lego Series Play that I think it's part of why it gets to the heart of the matter quicker. It's because people just can't help themselves. And I think that's a
Yep.
great example of it that you said. It's like you got to see them in all their glory, good, bad, berating, and otherwise.
So I'm really interested in one of the clients I'm going to be working on is an Australian subsidiary of a US parent, US global company. So the initial
Mm,
conversation we've had has been global is doing this to us. We can't do anything. So
mm.
I'm going to use Lego to kind of test that theory and open them up a little bit more.
Yeah,
So being able to say is, okay, guys, what can you control? What can't you control? Now let's talk
yeah,
around the things that we can't control. What does this mean to you? use Lego as one of the tools to have a more open conversation, take those guardrails down a little bit more.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of theory I have in my head in terms of putting it into practice. Now I'm really interested to see what the response is going to be.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love that, Will. I love that you're, it's not experimenting, but you obviously as an experienced facilitator, you already have these insights when you're first engaging with the client and they're saying things and you're taking that in and you're like, I think Lego Series Play will be this tool to just open that up a bit more and see if I'm right. And I love that. I think a lot of people can be too safe or too not scared, but they're too cautious with Lego Series Play and other tools. And I think what you just described is great. You just get in there, you use it, it opens stuff up. You learn about the method, you learn about these people, you learn about your own facilitation skills. And as long as you have that mindset of learning from that, both for that engagement and for the future, then nothing ever bad comes from doing these sessions and just going for it.
Yeah, no, I think the key thing for me is you're not just using it for the sake of it, using something fun or novel. You're actually using it for a purpose and to get
Yeah.
and target an outcome. So I think for me that's really important because you can still see how it works and how it responds and how people react to it over time and the benefit from it then as well. So I think it's really I think in a good place to be able to use that as something to test with people. So
Mm.
the place it plays within professional services, I think it's a really useful tool to be able to have that. And I'd love to see more and more professional services company use it as one of those
Yeah.
key tools for those transformations and those facilitations.
Yeah, if I think of professional services, like you're in the business of change. Like people come to you because they're somewhere and they want to be somewhere else in terms of systems, people, culture, whatever it is. And so Lego Series Play is just such a wonderful tool to help as part of that journey, which is what you've been describing this whole podcast. And you're right. I just think it fits into almost every professional services professionals toolkit, like just getting out there. I love it. All right, as we wrap things up, I want to throw it back to you. Anything else you want to add? Anything we haven't talked about Lego Series Play, facilitation, professional services, just anything that you wanted to throw out there before we wrap up.
No, I have to say, I really enjoyed, done a bit of homework, listened to a few podcasts come up. I
Thank
really
you.
enjoy the work that you're doing. I love the fact that you're kind of pushing it out there and getting it more into life.
Mm,
So I think for me, I really enjoy doing it. I can't wait to see what way it's going to develop and change and nuance over
mm.
time. And, really looking forward to just broadening the community and use of this in practice then as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. And I love the conversation today because it's been a different one around, you in a big organization, like you in professional services, and yeah, you've got clients, but it's just understanding it in a different context. Lego Series Play in a different context. I know there's a lot of people out there that when they come to training with Lego Series Play, some of them are the external consultant, some of them are their own business, but a lot of them are internal. They're internal to big organizations. And so it's nice to hear from someone sort of on the front line within an organization, both how internally that's dealt with, but also how you deal with clients as well. Um, where can people follow you? Do you mind them following you on LinkedIn and things like that?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. So if anybody kind of want to looks any information, anything going to help with, you can ping me on
Yeah,
LinkedIn. That's where I spend most of my time at the moment.
yeah,
And then over time it may change, but I suppose that's the main place at the moment.
yeah. Cool, awesome. Thanks, Bill. I'm looking forward to getting you back on as well in the future. So seeing that evolution of Lego Series Play in professional services and both in your organization, but also, you know, I can see you're the advocate for across the industry. I can see you're wanting others to do it. And obviously your organization is a bit more forward thinking. And I know your organization is a bit more forward thinking around some of this stuff. And some of the other, well, let's just say some of the places, not wanting to name KPMG, hey, everyone out there who works at KPMG, but back in the day when I was there 20 years ago, we were a little conservative. And so it's nice to see a professional services firm really sort of pushing use of tools, as they should. Like it's all in service of the client. It's all in service of, what you're trying to achieve. And we just know Lego Series Play it should be in everyone's toolkit. So thank you. Thank you for this, Will. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I have to admit, at a couple of points, I have been wandering my eyes onto your background, everything from the Fraggle Rock to some of the stuff you're talking about, sort of settling into this new sort of office of yours. And I'm just like, oh, some of that stuff in the background. We'll have to have another podcast about all these wonderful
Indeed, indeed.
things.
I'll probably do a podcast and it'll play as I go along. So this is the problem with this behind me. Sometimes I get a bit distracted. I start playing with toys, which is never
You
good.
step like it. And I like that number one dad. We talked about that number one. I gotta get a number. Where's my number one dad? All right. Thanks, Will.
A
All right,
pleasure.
everyone. So that's been Will Barnes, and follow him on LinkedIn. And we are definitely going to get Will back along on the podcast. I'm aiming for every year to get people along because I just want to see your journey. I want to revisit. I want to see, this is a marker in time, and another year I want to see where you've taken it within your organization with your clients. So, and as always, if anyone wants to come onto the podcast and you're interested in Lego Serious Play, drop me a line, and I'm keen to, like I have today with Will, to sort of share the wonders of people doing Lego Serious Play in all these different contexts. So keep an eye out for some more podcasts coming up. We've got some other interesting ones around sports and different contexts, much like professional services, outside of that as well. But otherwise, I might even do a couple just me as well. I was saying, well, with the podcast, it's interesting. It's almost like you need some sort of narcissism to be able to just do these solo podcasts, and so I need to balance it with like interviews as well, so that people don't think I'm just some weird guy talking at a camera. But it's been wonderful connecting again, so thank you.
Likewise, sir. Great, great to connect. Thanks for the opportunity and look forward to seeing how things change over time.
Cool. Thanks, Will. See you, everyone.
Take care.